Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You are tuned into part 1 of 2 of a very, very, very exciting special presentation we are bringing to you called Roadwork. For that, you see the familiar faces there, but I will introduce them once again. Michael Taylor, Monica Sigmund. I'm just going to start this off by saying I love this idea. Education can get so stale and stiff and boring. It's nice to see people get out on the road, create, really get inside the mind of the artist, interact with people all across the globe from different backgrounds, and then use that creation as a means for educating and inspiring others. And I think for me, that's what this road series is about. Michael's like, "You're way off, dude. Stop talking. Take it over."
I'm like, damn.
But look, I'm super interested. I love stuff like this. I love stuff like this because this is what inspires people to pick up a camera if they've never picked one up before. People who love talking with people, meeting with people. I love doing that. So there, I'm gonna welcome you guys in. It's great to have you guys back. How's it going?
Thanks for having us back.
And
Always
Derek
good.
said, I've told you that I need to come up to the city and we need to go pick out a block in the city and you do your street photography, the beautiful stuff that you do, and then we'll do a couple portraits when we're there too. And then we show our
You
work.
guys should sell tickets.
There
It
we
would
go.
be a blast, wouldn't it?
It would be nice if we had like a platform to actually do stuff like this. I
Yeah,
don't know
we could-
where. I don't know
we
where we
could-
would ever show
We
it.
could find one.
Yeah.
I'll just like go and shoot BTS because I think that'd be super fun.
Just watching Michael and I tear it up on the streets in New York.
Yeah.
And I'll get
totally.
a t-shirt that says Tool number 2. So
As long as I get to be the biggest tool. Well, look, this is what I think all photographers should do at some point, whether it's professionally or personally, is just get out there and interact. And we have become such a we like to lock people in the boxes where it's like you're a portrait photographer, you're a wedding photographer, you're product. And the older I get, the more seasoned I get, the more experienced I get as a photographer, I realize I'm just a photographer. I take pictures of things that I like. I love meeting people. A lot of times I'll take a picture of somebody just to have a visual. It's like a visual journal entry because it's way quicker than writing.
mhm.
So I'll use that again as like my little added. I'll write the forward to your book one day, Michael. There you go.
Okay.
I'm
That's
putting
deal.
in. You leapfrog me. I'm gonna come get you. But yes, I'm
Perfect.
offering right now. When you do the book, I'm gonna write the forward to all of you out there who are wondering when
we
I'm gonna
all
stop
heard it.
talking. We
Yeah.
all heard it here. We got it live. The
Yeah.
internet is forever. So I'm gonna turn it over to Michael and Monica, and I'm gonna remind you all, if you do have any questions, feel free to get them in. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube, which is probably where you're watching us right now, well, hey, head over to the event space on YouTube and you can find this and all of our other pre-recorded content. But I'll see you guys in a bit for some Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. Are you ready?
Yeah.
You a little
let's go.
nervous?
Yeah, I am.
He's a little nervous. Okay.
It's not like taking pictures, I tell you.
I know it's
Yeah.
different. I'm going to get your keynote started here. And let's see, share screen. Desktop. Okay, so you guys should be seeing the logo. And then now you should be seeing the logo. Okay, so Michael started this project, what, a year and a half, maybe 2 summers ago.
2 summers, yeah.
And by accident. So I'm sure that he's going to talk about that.
Mhm.
And then and now it's really getting some legs and taking off. And
Mhm.
I think it's the best work you've ever done.
Yeah.
And I think that this will be really good for a lot of photographers who have wanted to do work like this, but kind of don't know where to get started. So it's a 2-part series today and Wednesday. And we're going to talk about the work that you're creating. And then we're going to talk also about like how you found people and the logistics of doing a project like this, right?
Yeah, part 1 is really the framework,
Okay.
the structure. And hopefully it's not the boring part, but
I'll move you along.
yeah, but I think with personal projects, I think a lot of people get stuck because they don't have a little bit of framework to keep them moving. So we're going to talk about how I started, framework, things like that. And then part 2, which is going to be on Wednesday, we'll get into the actual roadwork project in depth and show you a lot of images and all that good stuff.
Okay, perfect. So I think we did all that and our faces weren't even on the screen, but sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so Michael, take it away. Let's start here.
Well, we want to thank Sony because along with the great support that we get from B&H, and boy, do I love B&H. And, you know, every time I go up and see my son, I'm going by the store. And, but Sony also, you know, the gear that really helps us in our studio, in our business, in our livelihood, we are really indebted to for the support. But, you know, it's gear that we have always used. And it really frees us up to really create and use our minds more than having to concentrate on equipment. So thank you, Sony. This is our family. Monica and I have a studio in Williamsburg, Virginia. Those are our studio dogs, Lucy and Muppet. They come to the studio every day. This is our life, you know. This is how we make a living. This is how we enjoy our vocation. It's a lot of who we are because we're both creative type people. So this is very important to us, and it's we're so dedicated to it. I just wanted to show you very, very quickly the work that we do every day. We try to create unique individual type portraits for our families and children and corporate work and things like that. We do a lot of location work. We do a lot of beautiful work in the studio, some family portraits here. Monica has a product line called Black Label, which has really invigorated our studio and kind of set ourselves apart from the other photographers in the area, or the other ways people can spend money, you know, to create a history of their families and create artwork and create wall portraits and things like that to enhance their homes. Besides the studio work, we can go into the homes to really tell a bit about the people's lifestyle, the history of the home, where the kids grew up. You know, it's a place, it's a type of portrait that I personally love to do. So foundationally, of the 40 years I've been doing portrait photography, these environmental portraits are really what has made me stand out in our profession and when we teach and things like that. Besides the family work, we do some corporate work, a lot of medical photography, a lot of portraits there. We do a lot of first responder work for some of our health systems. So that's been kind of a fun project. But all this is about showing you that I love creating portraits on location. So doing this roadwork project is a variation. It's an enhancement. It's a way for me to stretch my ability to create on an everyday level. And that's what I really wanted to do with this. And looking at this portrait here, this is a gentleman that was saluted by one of the health systems, and besides doing this portrait that was used in the annual report, I've always looked when I've had the opportunity to do another type of portrait, something that's a little more personal for me. So when we got done with the formal part of the session, when I would walk through the garage going into his house to set up, I noticed this little workshop where he works on his golf clubs. He loves golfing. He loves to tinker with his clubs, rewrapping the handles and all this stuff that I didn't know anything about. So at the end of the session, he changed his clothes. We dove into what his passion is.
Clearly retired.
Yeah, he's retired. Yeah. So, you know, this has always been something that's been of interest to me, because even though I want to get someone's personality and their likeness and all that stuff with our regular studio portraits, I've liked this other little melody that people have.
Well, and I think too, you know, I think that these portraits that you're talking about particularly are just so unusual. So when, in fact, we'll talk about, I'm sure, in Roadwork, many of the people that you chose for this project have been photographed several times already for their local publicity or even on a national scale. So they all feel like they kind of know what you're going to shoot because everybody before you has shot the same perspective or idea. So I love that you come to it with these portraits that other people wouldn't really think about. And even this, I feel like it's a pretty straightforward portrait, but there's just a really nice feeling about it and nice. I was like, when did you take that? I haven't seen that.
She didn't see a lot of the commercial work I do. I just kind of send it to the clients. So it's like, oh,
I'm busy.
wow.
I'm working.
Yeah. So when I was kind of putting this program together, I was just searching around on the internet a little bit about personal projects and photographers. And I saw that John Paul Caponegro, who's that magnificent fine art photographer who has been so important in our industry for decades now, had this wonderful article on his website about personal projects. So I love some of the things that he had to say. So there's the connection below that you can go to his blog, to his website to see this, where he really expands on it. But let me just kind of go over some of these points because I think it's so important. And he really spoke to how I feel about personal projects, and you too, because you totally believe in personal projects also to develop your vision. First, you got to define really what you want to do. It's your personal project. You have to love it. You have to buy in 110%. You need to not do something because someone else is doing it or someone else suggests, I'm doing this, and you don't want to copy somebody.
Right.
So you really want to make it personal and individual.
But explain why you don't want to copy somebody, because our listener or viewers might think that we're just talking about, make things your own, but really, yes, but also why should they not copy?
It really goes to the core of how I want to create portraits. I know that when we all get started into art or craft or whatever, we copy photographers that we like. We try to copy their style. We try to copy their lighting, all that kind of stuff. But when we copy something, all we're doing is trying to remember how that person did that portrait. And so I don't want to copy myself. I don't want to go to a park or something and photograph a 4-year-old and go back to that same tree and do that same portrait all the time in that same spot. All you're doing is going on autopilot. You're not thinking. You're not really looking. You're not really looking at the nuance of the lighting, where it's different from 1 hour to the next or half hour to the next, the clouds in the sky, things like that. So I don't even want to copy my own work.
Well, but also too, I think that when we just copy, or just we become a mimic, and then we get bored with it. Like it's because it's not ours. It's not what's making us excited.
Yeah.
So you'll master it and then you'll be bored with it, or
Well,
whatever.
it's just a shell.
Yeah.
Because you're not really getting in depth with it, because you're not really using your personality. I tell people that when you make portraits, if you're really doing it right, it's really a self-portrait, because your history, your passion, that library of images that's in your head should be part of that image you're creating. So something you taught me how about that, huh? It is so good to give a name to it, and so important. When you created the Black Label line of portraits, when you put that name on it, Black Label, it felt like all these different little parts came together. And you were able to explain it. You were able to explain it better because I saw you have being more at ease explaining it. So when we came up with the name Roadwork,
Oh, that was all you.
I know it was on me, but I thought I'd try to make it feel good.
It does legitimize a project,
right.
and it legitimizes it for people who you are asking to participate, because I think it's on the list, but I'm going to kind of move us along just a little bit. But I think, the most common thing that everybody asks when you invite them to participate in something like this, or any of the ones that I've done, whatever, is, what are you doing this for? What's this going to end up as? What's the purpose? Like, what are you working on? And so I think it's really important for anybody working on a personal project to have an answer for that. Even if the answer is, I'm not sure, I'm thinking it's going to be this. I wanted to explore this because maybe it's something as simple as you're introducing a new line, you're freshening up your website, whatever, but you have to have an answer for that, because if you're wishy-washy about it, they're not as excited and they're not as convicted, and they're not going to talk about it. They don't have anything to talk about because you don't have anything to talk about.
Time is precious, and we've always talked about that. And you've really talked about how important time is for everybody else, because we all have the equal amount of time in our lives. So, I think people want to know if they're going to give time to you, especially when they don't know you, and I'm
Right.
rolling in from out of town, they have no idea who I am. They want you to be serious,
Right.
and by giving a name to it and a purpose for it, it really helps you with the time that they're giving you. So, set a time, be flexible. Everybody can read all this, have a mission, be prepared to be surprised, which is wonderful, which means don't be so focused. It's great to be focused on a project, but look, see where it's going. Maybe it's going this way. Maybe it's going that way. Maybe people that you're going to be photographing, or whatever your project is kind of curving to the right here for some whatever reason. But maybe you're finding more people that are passionate about and connecting with you because of that. So be a bit open-minded, find your groove. I love that. And past projects, I believe in this so much. Past projects lead to new projects. About every decade I in my career, I was having a big project that I did. And they all helped my business too, because it gave me more notoriety, gave me more presence in my community, things like that. And but it's given me a history too, and a familiarity to work on these projects, and a comfort level, and being able to go out there and tell people when I'm photographing the stories about past projects, maybe. So I like that.
I think too, with personal projects like this, when you tell me what you think, but when you take money off the table, and it's really just creating for yourself, and you're not in the back of your mind wondering, are they going to buy something? Are they going to, you always want them to like it, but when you take that money off of the table, you shoot differently. I shoot differently when I'm not worried about, is mom going to be okay that I didn't have the child smile with all of their teeth or whatever, then I can really shoot the way I want to and create the work that I want to be out in the world.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think the things that I still do think about is I want to flatter the people, because I am so much at the core a portrait photographer, a retail portrait photographer, and that I want them to love the story that I'm telling about them. So I still have those strong guidelines in my head, or something like that still talk to me when I'm doing a portrait of people.
And the last point is important, because I think we as a society are, thinking that everything can be done more quickly, and these things do take time. And when you rush them is when you're cutting corners and making some sacrifices that kind of defeat the purpose.
Well, I tell you what, our mutual friend, and especially your strong friend, Jean Fruth, really has inspired me on this project, because watching, and you guys need to look her up, but watching.
Well, she's on like 1800 B&H webinars.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm sure you know. So, but watching her tackle these projects that take her around the world, and the people do not realize the effort it takes to get these things organized, or find subjects, or just the logistics of the travel and all that kind of stuff really inspires me. So just watching her live her life is really helped me with this project. So this is something my son said to me, which I think is really important and valuable, which I have yet to do, but I'm going to, and that's why I put the slide in here. I have this primary project that I'm doing, but I need to start percolating on another project, because Nathaniel said that whenever he's done a project, it has ebb and flows. It has peaks and valleys. You can really push past it, but sometimes you slow down and you need to work on another thing to keep things moving in your creative life. Get started, quit talking, begin doing. I love that. So things really started with projects when COVID hit, and we were doing what? You were doing puzzles in our living room, and I was watching you do puzzles in our living room. And we're both much happier doing what?
Shooting.
Shooting. We love to shoot. It's so much part of our lives. I needed to find something to do because the retail business was quite a bit slow. And I came up with this idea because we're in Williamsburg, good old colonial Williamsburg. And Jamestown is right here. Yorktown's right here. The Jamestown Museum and the Yorktown Museums we have a relationship with. And it has always occurred to me that when you go to a museum, you do not realize all the people it takes to bring this museum into life, to bring the exhibits out, to have the education, the fundraising, the money, that all those people behind the scenes are hidden. We just see some people out in the gallery. Sometimes we see the security guards, things like that. So I went to the Jamestown Yorktown Foundation and thought, let's do a project and photograph the behind the scenes workers. So for about a year, I think, right? I wound up photographing about 40 people and had an incredibly invigorating time. I love the freedom that I got, like you said earlier, when you do have a personal project, but it really helped me stretch my thinking and my visual muscles by having this project and trying to tell the story of all these different individuals. This gentleman here, they have 3 ships that were that came into Jamestown, and he's the one that helped build the ships and recreate them. This gentleman is a driver. He's in the motor pool. But when you could just walk by this guy and just kind of shrug him off and just think, what? Okay, he drives a car, he drives a truck, things like that. He makes deliveries. His family has been involved with one of the historical museums, Colonial Williamsburg or the Yorktown or Jamestown, since 1948. And it is wonderful to hear that story and that passion and that knowledge that he has, about the history around here. This guy makes the sets. He builds the sets, deals with the artifacts. He's a painter. He helps do the exhibits. Really fun to go into this kind of nondescript little paint shop and see what I can do.
So why don't you talk about this a little bit, about kind of what you walked into for this portrait?
It was just a square room with that background there that gets painted by so many different colors, but seeing the greens up there, I noticed that there was this rolling tool chest. So I brought that over because we got the green and the red primary colors, just using one medium-sized softbox to light his face, a little slight speed light in the background to create a little bit of dimension, and another speed light behind me to act as a little bit of a fill light. Just trying to keep my lighting pretty simple and just work with the elements that's in the room there. The auto mechanic just opened the door to let the light come in, turning some lighting on in the background so that we could have a bit of depth and dimension. I tend to shoot with wide angle lens a lot. I probably shot all of these portraits on a 24-70 or just a 24mm prime. Just bringing that tool in front of him to create some texture and filling up these blank spaces like the top of the tool chest, with a piece of gear. This lady had she's one of the historians. She had a 10-foot by 10-foot cubicle. So you walk in there and it's stacked with books. The only thing I had to do was move some books apart. So I had a little shooting lane to photograph or bounce the light off the wall on the right-hand side to create some dimensional light. I love this man. He's the historian over at Yorktown. He went home to change to get some of his best gear on,
Gear?
and clothing on.
Clothing.
And it's just fantastic. He's feeling so good. His shirt doesn't line up with his pants, but look at this man. He is comfortable in his element and just, it's fantastic. I love that personality. We have the clothing designer out there, putting a translucent screen over the window to soften the light and just a little speed light, shooting through the translucent to give a little highlight in her eyes, turning the lamp on here on the right-hand side so that there's a triangle of colors, the red, green, blues, and the yellow over here where she is right in the center compositionally.
So people should know that you moved those things to be where you want. Like you didn't walk in and everything was sitting like that.
No, everything was in a closet and things like that. I don't want to move everything around, but sometimes you have to move things around to make it work compositionally, but also I want to bring elements into all of these stories that help tell a story about that person. So your main subject's that person, but your secondary subject is that environment around that person that helps tell a story.
So walk us through that. So you come in, because I wasn't at this shoot. So you come in, I'm assuming the scissors and the thread were not there.
Correct.
And the two mannequins were not there.
The two mannequins were back in the closet, so I pulled them out. I like on this one, I tend to shoot with a wide angle lens a lot because I like to bring a lot of environment in there, but I need to manage that environment then and manage a viewer's visual perspective on that portrait. So bringing the red up here because it's a very strong, beautiful color, and then bringing the cool colors of that other mannequin back there with a speed light behind it so that there's a little bit of depth back there. And then on the right-hand side, turning the lamp on and bringing that yellow material. I brought it across her waist and brought it up the wall a little bit because I felt like the colors of the red, blue, and green, yellow would work really well together. And just throwing the scissors and that thread or whatever it is in the front, just being part of her tools. But also, again, like with the mechanic, the top of that tool chest was just a flat, boring surface. So I wanted to put something there to fill up the boredom, so to speak. When we have texture in a portrait, it adds to our visual interest. So if I can add some of that without taking away from the portrait, I tend to like my compositions to be a little bit complicated because I want people to stay with the image a little bit and search around it.
So for the audience, how many lights did you use in this and where are they?
I use a speed light on the outside the window. That window is acting as a main light source, but it has a translucent screen over it. But it was coming from behind her just a little touch, and I wasn't getting a good highlight in the eyes. So I put a speed light out there so that it would shoot through the translucent and reflect off her eyes, so I would get a highlight there. And then behind the blue and green mannequin is a speed light. You can see where it's light on the wall. And then the table lamp, which she had on the right-hand side. So two speed
Didn't you
lights.
have one in that back corner?
It might be. I think it's more the translucent
Okay.
lighting up the window room.
And how long did you have for this session?
25 minutes.
So you walked in, assessed, rearranged, lit, talked, photographed, and out in 25 minutes. Okay.
And most of it was talking.
Yeah.
And just getting familiar and saying hi and not just going in and saying, hey, smile, but I want to get to know the people. That's part of the joy of photographing these people is getting to know them a little bit, it's the visual reward of doing these portraits. And, we both get this excitement when we get that image, but it's the reward of meeting these people. All of these people are now in here. are here somewhere, you know, and that I refer back to and I think about and all that. It adds to your life. So if you can add to your life, you know, it adds to your visual clarity. The photographer here, it was a cinder block room, and we about killed each other because you came and helped me on this session, and we almost killed each other because equipment wasn't working, the
You
softbox
left
working.
something at the studio.
I might have, and
He was a professional photographer.
professional photographer.
So we were
so
totally,
fortunately, I was able to use his softbox on the right-hand side there.
but it didn't fit our light. So I'm holding it by my thumbs. I
Yeah.
mean, we just looked like real pros.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
it was a keeper.
Plus,
that session.
plus it was a cinder block room.
Yeah.
So, and just making it look great.
That was not my favorite.
Historian out there, another cubicle, photographing through her collection and some of her books. The next picture is
And
the,
don't you think when you do that, like, 'cause she did not want to be photographed.
oh no.
And so when you're bringing all these other things in, then they feel like it's not all the attention is
It's
on
not
them.
all-
So it makes
yeah.
them feel more comfortable.
You know, in a weird kind of way, when you're photographing people, especially at this kind of work that they do, it's almost like photographing people with their family. Because, you know, when you're there with your family, people are a lot more relaxed than being by themselves in front of the camera.
Mhm.
You know, you're there with your 4 of the siblings or something like that. You're fine. You're in a group. So they kind of almost feel like they're in there with their group, you know? So we missed a slide.
Well, because you missed a slide, because that one goes with the next two. So I was going to this one. Or do you want me to go get the other ones?
No, right there. So going into here, we were having huge rainstorms here in the area. So they had everything covered with tarp. So we had to find places where it was tarpless. So you just have to be able to go down a different path a little bit. So coming in closer with one of the archivists, bringing a model ship from out in the hallway, actually, to photograph through, using the boxes back there because it's a warm tone to go with the warm tone of the ships, and having her engage with that artifact. Because part of what they do, besides getting the artifacts ready to be out in the exhibits. So on the next one here, I'm photographing down this little line of file cabinets, and most people, and me included to start with, it's like, what am I going to do here? But you can see my lighting there with bare bulb strobe through a modifier, and then a speed light behind him, pointed to him to give a little bit of edge light, and then a speed light in the background there. And pulling the drawers out in front, so you have something to lean on, there's texture in there, and then pulling the drawers out in the background to add further texture. So just doing these different portraits that way to tell stories about these people, but he kind of built up my visual muscle about doing projects and really growing my desire. Hey, I want to really do something where I would actually have a little bit more freedom that wasn't tied in with a museum or a corporation or things like that. So just having fun doing these.
So compositionally, though, you're always trying to have a foreground, middle ground, and background. And can you explain why?
I generally want that because our mind sees dimensionally. You know, our eyes just go all over so quickly and bring in everything and figure things out like that. But a photograph has height and width. A photograph is 2-dimensional, so that we use lighting, we use placement, we use objects in the foreground and behind a person that go out of focus to create a sense of dimensionality in that image. You know, our clients say our portraits look real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really essentially what they're talking about.
Oops, wait, sorry.
So this guy had the worst shirt I have ever seen on a living human being. But he loved it. He obviously works in the wood shop, light coming through and hitting the bandsaw there and reflecting off that is giving him his key light. So I moved him back up the wood shop just a little bit and using the table on the right to bring the table in on the left to get those angles coming into him. And the window on the right-hand side is a key light, and the window behind him is a hair light and edge light. So, and then I just wanted to make it black and white just to tone down the awful green, almost 70s shag color
Hopefully
carpet
he's not
that he's
watching.
wearing. He loves this portrait, and I have told him that that was the worst clothing I've ever seen on a human being. He goes, I really like my portrait.
So one thing too is a common mistake that photographers make when creating portraits outdoors or anywhere on location is that they're looking for the background first. They're trying to find like a really cool place that is pretty behind their subject.
And we're going to talk about this next.
Oh, okay.
Almost next.
Perfect. Did you want me to go here?
You can skip down to the outside of the exhibit.
Okay.
So anyway, this whole exhibit was all these images were put together, and the Jamestown Yorktown Federation had a display out at the Jamestown Museum. So they were these images were incorporated into their collection, and which gave us and continues to give us some notoriety in the area. So with all this, there's some basic photo concepts that I like to carry through, and it especially works well on this project that we're going to show you a lot of images of on Wednesday, the Roadwork. So photo concepts. One is I want to find or modify the lighting for the subject. You know, like Monica was starting to say, most photographers will choose a place to photograph with their person because of the background first.
Mhm.
I want to pick a place where the lighting is beautiful, or I'm able to modify the lighting at that spot, either with reflector or sometimes with on corporate work, strobes, translucents, different things like that. So for example, when a couple of first responders shot here, this first one here, it's towards the end of the day, towards sunset. The lighting is beautiful. It's tunneling through these two groups of trees so that I found the light. This is a great place where the light is found. So on the second photograph, this is where the light is modified because I needed to photograph this particular unit in front of the hospital, Riverside Hospital. I had to put the fire engines there and the ambulance unit and then light that scene. So you need to be able to pick spots that you can either find the light or modify the light.
And if people go look at our family portraits on our website or Instagram or whatever, count on one hand the times that we've used a strobe outdoors.
Yeah, you know, for corporate work, we use it I use it quite a bit because a lot of times you're needing to be in a certain spot, the front of a corporate headquarters, front of a hospital, the hospital
at a certain
president.
time of day.
Correct.
Yeah.
So then you need to use your tools to be able to modify that. But maybe once a year, maybe we'll use a strobe outdoors to do a family portrait or a high school senior or something like that. It is so rare that we have to think about when have we done that?
Yeah.
You know, so.
And the reason is because when we go outdoors, we're not looking for the background. We're looking first for where the lighting is going to be good on their faces.
Right.
Then finding a background that will fall into place exposure wise.
Right. Most people will go, whoa, look at that spot. Look at that building. That is a great spot, but the lighting's miserable on the face.
Right.
And they're trying to shoehorn that person in front of that location. So all these concepts, you know, we bring every day, but it's really important with whatever your personal project is, or at least for me. So I like, we're going to talk about 3 or 4 different concepts real quickly here. I like to create dimensionality. So I'm going to do that through lighting, composition, or where the subject is placed within the composition. Lens choice, you can do that, especially if you're using longer lenses. But for this project, this upcoming project that I'm going to show you, I photographed everything on a 24 millimeter. I see that way but I wanted to make it a little harder for me. I didn't want this to be easy. I bring foreground and background in there. I use a background light a lot. A lot of time it's natural, and I like using leading lines. And it's natural leading lines like tables, fences, the way of the building, leading a person into the wall and photographing down that wall instead of photographing back into the wall. Okay.
That's amazing.
Okay. Then you have the subject stand. Everything's brown and orange, black and orange. Okay. So through lighting, composition, again, point of contrast. That is so important, especially you're going to see this in the roadwork images on Wednesday. There's so much busyness in a lot of my images, but the point of contrast is that person. Okay. So if you have, just think about it simply. If you have a piece of white paper and you have a black dot, your eye is going to go to that black dot first. So you can have all this busyness, but where you don't have all the business is that person, your eye is going to go to that person. But then all that busyness is visual interest, it's texture, it's telling a story about that person. So I like including all that. Where the sharpest part of your focus, you go back,
Sorry.
is that's where your eye is going to go to. Also use of color. We saw like with a designer, brought her in the center of all those primary colors, and then right in the center she is. And then visual balance. You know, visual balance is composition, but it's also, if there's a big white wall over here and the person's over here on the bottom left, you're going to go to that person, because of contrast, but because where the visual interest is right there where that person is, with the colors and textures and lighting falling on that person. So in our mind, we want to go where it's interesting. And so that's what visual balance is. That's why it's not always rule of thirds or something like that. You know, visual balance is the concept that's really, really important.
You
Okay.
know, if you weren't so scared to click your own slides, then this would be
Okay,
kind
don't
of
tell
better.
everybody to do this. So photographic style, really make sure your personality and your style runs through all of these images. With the photographs I took out at the museum, I wanted to show that it's this one person photographing this whole exhibit. So it's a funny kind of balance to have a style run through all the images, but also to make the images look different.
And
You don't want
individual.
everything to look the same. So with the gear that I use, we use A7R5, which I just love. It is a magic camera. It's incredible. And then with the this project I did, I used the Sony 24 millimeter.
Okay, let's pause on that
Okay.
for a moment, because 9 out of 10 portrait photographers, if you ask them their lens of choice, they would not be answering the 24, maybe 9.5 people out of 10.
Yeah, probably
It's
more.
one of the least intuitive lenses to use for portraits.
Mhm.
For street scenes or landscape, then it's great, but we wouldn't think about this for portraits.
Right.
I think part of it, besides, you know, the obvious perspective, is that the lenses used to really not be reliable edge to edge.
Mhm.
You know, so it was always thought that we would really not do a service to that person because of the distortion on the lens, edge to edge. Now technology has changed. The 24 1.4 GM is a magnificently gorgeous and sharp edge to edge lens.
Mhm.
But still, why did you choose the 24? Because that's so counterintuitive.
Well, since I started photography when we had flash powder, I really
You know,
like-
most of the people are so young, they don't even know what flash
well, they know
powder
what
was.
the internet is, so they can look it up. And I've always looked, my vision was always very married into a 24 millimeter lens. I've always liked it. So it's a very comfortable lens for me to use. Being that I'm photographing people with personality, with passion about their life or their work, the way they're living. Usually their environments are visually interesting. So I want to include a lot of their environment when I'm photographing. So, and I don't want to make this easy. You know, if I had a 200 millimeter lens, everything in the foreground, everything in the background's being thrown out of focus, the people are sharp. Great. That's a nice portrait. It's lovely. We do it all the time. I want something that's a little bit harder. I need to think. I can't go on autopilot. I have to think about the lighting. I have to think about placement of the people and the lens and all these objects and environment to make it work. So it's making me work harder, which I love because this is about growth. You know, it's about expanding my vision. It's about having a little bit different taste to these portraits that other people generally don't do. So, and, you know, even though we have that beautiful edge to edge with that 24 millimeter, you still have to be a bit careful about placement of hands too far forward or
Right.
putting the person too close to the edge or things like that. So it's a good thing to think about. I've been using the Elinchrom ones on these portraits. Beautiful efficiency, very consistent color temperature, very consistent power. We can go to the next slide. Very small, so that I can usually, if I'm walking around the city, around New York, I'll have a small backpack with one Elinchrom 1 and my Sony with a 24 millimeter, and I'm walking around the city, you know, when you're doing all your busy stuff.
When I'm working.
When you're working, yeah. So, and all this kind of came together. Okay, so we have coming out of COVID, I like personal projects. I want to do something. When we came out of COVID, you and I, go ahead and click on another image. Click. We got ourselves an Airstream and we started traveling more. And one of the things that I've always noticed is that every once in a while when we started traveling, we would run into some people, run into an individual, not literally, but we would meet someone and I would want to do their portrait. And we've had some great experiences spending more time when we travel with some individuals. So when we camped at a campground near Charlottesville, this gentleman had some campsites on his property that we stayed at. And looking at this good old boy, you would again, here's another person that you would just stereotype, right? You know, this man, this kind man has hundreds of acres of farmland. He works for the Department of Energy for Virginia. He has a firewood business. You see all this firewood here that we drove by on the way to our campground that he delivers to restaurants in Charlottesville. The guy's a multi-millionaire and with a kind heart. I mean, we started talking with him because he noticed that a wire connecting our truck with our Airstream was stripped, and he came back.
Tell us you've never camped without telling us you've never camped. It's like when we roll in, our wires are like dragging.
Yeah. He's coming back with his toolkit and repairing it for us. And we started talking, and I said, "Can I do your portrait?"
And
Sure.
this was okay. So this was before the idea of Roadwork.
Correct.
So let's just.
So I'm just
yeah.
showing you some seminal portraits and some ideas or why all this stuff kind of came together.
And this, you did not have any gear. You did not
No.
have any lights. We didn't have a reflector.
Mm.
And you shot this on the A7C.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you had to just find the light
Mhm.
under that overhang.
So I was starting after that, I was becoming more mindful of kind of looking for people, you know, are we going to run out? You know, while I was driving, I was kind of keeping an eye out for a place that was interesting, that might be kind of fun to stop. So, you know, I was doing some portraits, you know, just randomly running into folks, again, not literally, and asking them if I could make their portrait. Or walking around the streets in New York City. This was a florist shop right around the corner from our hotel, and walking back there and asking the owner, "Hey, can I take your portrait?" And he, of course, says, "I am really busy. I am busy. I am busy." And he talks for me for a half hour after I spent 3 minutes doing his portrait. The reflector on the ground, of course, down Central Park. Where
Derek was with us for that.
yeah, absolutely. So People always ask, as I started making this more of a formal effort, doing this project called Roadwork, yeah, I decided I needed to be more serious about finding people and starting to we traveled, starting to set up um, appointments so that it wouldn't just be random, that we would go someplace and maybe run across people. So I would do web searches, I would explore subjects that are familiar with that town. If you were in Nashville, maybe you would look for musicians. If you're in Memphis, you're looking for barbecue people or whatever. I would look at local magazines to find lists of interesting people. NPS and PBS, NPR, they're always doing feature stories, looking at those sites also. If I saw something on Instagram, I would do a screenshot of that person and go and just put it aside in a folder. And maybe if we're going to be by Chattanooga or something like that, I'd have someone from Chattanooga that I thought was interesting. And this sounds silly. If sometimes I was in some place where we're working, I got a little extra time, I would drive around the outskirts. You don't drive around the place where all the normal stores are and the downtown is, but start driving around the outskirts, you start finding people that are interesting. And one thing that really helped me while I was searching on the internet was Monica put together a web page that explained the Roadwork. So it formalized things a bit. So besides having that name, we had a portfolio of images and this little short bio about me. So, she's so embarrassed, but I'll send out emails in caps in the headline going, please read this, I beg you, and things like that.
It's horrifying.
But it is remarkable. I probably get about a 60% rate of people saying yes, right? It's incredible.
So, but not from the beginning.
Not from the beginning.
And what's interesting now, so we made the landing page for you, and it has, like he said, a bio and a little portfolio there, and it has a name, so it's legitimized, and we talk about the Airstream on there. So it connects to our regular site, so people can figure out that we're not like crazy people. We're actually, have a business and whatnot. And so,
and can I just interrupt you real quick? It's really nice that it connects to our regular site, because especially the ladies, they go look at our regular site, they see that we're married and we have a legitimate business, and it's like,
it's safer.
it's fine.
It's safer.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Something that I didn't consider, but it's over and over. I've heard that from the ladies I photograph. And
the other thing is that when you legitimize it like this, because now we've moved into an application. So mostly it's people that you're finding them. But on the website, it says apply to be photographed here. And so that makes it a little bit more high end, a little bit more special. And then that helps you. Now you're getting, it's funny, the people that are saying no to you are the lesser known artists or the lesser accomplished artists.
Yeah, it is incredible. The artists,
because they kind of don't know what's in front of them. Whereas the people who you're like, I'm going to throw this out to this guy, but he's doing a multi-million-dollar installation at the Smithsonian. He's never going to say yes. And he's like the first one, they're the ones that answer the most quickly.
Especially artists, these artists that I think walk on water, that are nationally, internationally known, are saying yes to me. So it's incredible. So
should we move?
No.
Okay.
No. So for example, when I say go to the outskirts of town, I was down in Atlanta photographing a family portrait, had a little bit of time, this beautiful little town east of Atlanta, and driving through the outskirts, I saw this sign that said professional wrestling training. Fantastic. So I go pull up, I walk in, and this is what's inside the gym there. And one guy's throwing another guy, he's throwing a guy, then stomps his foot on the mat 3 seconds later. And I go and ask the owner, hey, can I do your portrait for this project? We couldn't set a time up, but I got his information. And when I go to Atlanta this summer, I'm going to get in touch with him and set up a portrait. And you come out right across the street is this metal recovery place. There's this huge welding factory, just interesting places for me because I think they're visually interesting. And so I have a little bit of a source to connect with these people and say, hey, I would love to do your portrait. Look at magazines. Brooklyn Magazine has so many articles about, these are like 50 people that affected culture in 2024 in Brooklyn. What a resource, and go through some of them if I want to go up and spend some time photographing people. So these are ways to find sources. When we travel on the next one, I'll write down names of places that look interesting as we're driving by. This is one. It was Captain Dave's Little River Artistry. It looked crazy, looked interesting, looked fantastic. We were in out by the Smokies a year later, and I had emailed him and I had left a message and didn't hear anything. So I went out there and he's sleeping in a chair. I thought he was maybe dead. And he wakes up, he goes, oh, I never checked my email or listened to my phone. So I explained what I was doing. And these are some of the portraits I did of Captain Dave. And that's because I wrote a note down thinking that maybe at some point I'm going to be back in town to maybe do his portrait. So Wednesday, we are going to get into just showing you a lot of the Roadwork images that I've done. This was all foundational, and this was about building up to doing the Roadwork. Foundationally, what's important to me, compositionally, lighting wise, keeping a style within its portfolio, where I've kind of come from to get to this Roadwork portrait. We talked a little bit about how I find people, but it just depends on what kind of project you want to do. You need to find people that are connected with, if you want to do flowers. There's people that create new flowers. There are especially floral gardeners, all this kind of stuff. So it just depends on what your interest is in. But these are some of the ways I'm finding people, and just coming out of the blue. They don't know me. And like I said, I'm getting about a 60% rate of people saying yes. And I always have this little stack of people that say, I can't make it right now because their schedule or calendar, but next time you're in town, I would love to do it. So
Hey,
I'm
Darren.
done for today.
Hey, I love that. No, there's a beautiful, beautiful look in. I want to know, Michael, what's the one thing, if you could boil it down to one thing that you have taken away from this project? What is it? Is there like one overarching theme or something that has really stuck in your head?
Weirdly, I think the time I have spent with the people, photographing them, has been even more important than the images that I've been making. Because I have met such great people. I mean, I could get really emotional about it.
I'm sure you will on Wednesday.
I mean, these people that are passionate about either their art or their craft or the kind of job that they're doing or how they're living their life is amazing. I mean, we photographed this young farmer on a generational farm south of Pittsburgh, and we started talking to him, and he's like, he so cares about saving some of these dying breeds of domesticated herd animals, like cows and things like that. And he's got a bull or something like that from Colonial Williamsburg on his farm that he's trying to save. He's got a Clydesdale from Disney World, but just the guy's like 30 years old, but listening to how passionate he is about trying to keep the farm alive. And then the side thing about trying to save these animals, is just, it's a place that you've driven by a million times on a freeway, off to the side there. No, another farm, so.
Reality is a lot more positive than the internet. And a lot of the positivity on the internet is a facade. It's faked. It's when you get out there and you live life and you experience people, it's such a different experience. You're not judging someone based on the entire profile you've looked at before you interacted with them. You're not going based on what they post or what their views are. You're talking to people about whatever comes up and whatever you have in common. And it seems like there's such more of an effort to connect with them than there is to dissociate and disconnect and push them away, which I think is beautiful. We did have a couple questions come in. Question from Frank, who's joining us. He is a 50-something, just starting his career as a professional photographer, his swan song, if you will. I'm curious about the one tip you can share to motivate.
I think, look, what am I, 67? Something like that, right? I've had 3 knee replacements. It's harder to stand up, and all that kind of stuff. But, I would just say none of that matters when you get out there and you're doing what you love. And it is, I don't know, it's going to sound so trivial or trite, but you just have to get started. And once you get started, this project, for example, has really gotten a life of its own. I mean, people have really embraced it, and that has really helped me also. That once I got started and got out there and started finding people and started getting a little bit of a portfolio and talking to people about it. And I think when you're excited about what you do and it comes out honestly and you're truthful about your feelings, people love it, and I think Frank, just needs to get out there and just embrace something that he really loves to do, or a lifestyle he likes, or a profession he likes, or there's some kind of hobbyist that he loves what they're doing, or something like that. And when he finds that, embrace that and really get into that community and start shooting, and he's going to love it,
I mean, if it's making your heart sing when you're shooting, then do more of that. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Do more of that.
It's funny. I was thinking, I'm kind of trying to do a certain amount of portraits every year, for this project, and maybe get to 200 to whittle down into a book or something like that. And I started thinking, oh, I'm going to be kind of sad when that gets over, and that's going to take a couple years here, but it's just got to get out there and get started doing it, because nothing gets solved when you sit behind a desk,
Yeah. And I think if I can add on my unsolicited 2 cents, Frank, it's easier as an older person rather than a 20-year-old picking this up, because you've lived your life, you have experience, you know what you like, you know what you don't like. You're thinking more for yourself and less in terms of what's popular, what's trendy. And once you get to an older age where you're like, I want to do stuff that benefits me. I want to do stuff that, Monica, as you said, doesn't make your heart sing, doesn't make you feel good. You're able to cut through the fat so much easier at age 50 than you are at age 20, at age 30, because you're still figuring life out at those ages. And photography has such a tie-in to who you are as a person. If you're pouring your heart into your work, it's a reflection of who you are, of what you see. Michael, you said it beautifully early on, about, if you're doing it properly, these should all be a self-portrait of yourself. You probably said it a lot more eloquently, but that same idea. So
I think 50s are great. I just turned 50 a couple years ago, and I feel like my work is changing because I just am here for me now. So I wouldn't, Frank, I think it's awesome. And you'll have, like Derek said, more experience under your belt, gives you more things to talk about. It's easier to make conversation with strangers, and they take you more seriously. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. And if you stay away from the trend, right, hopefully you're going to be creating things that are going to be lasting, something that's going to be visually interesting. 50 years from now, 70 years from now, 100 years from now, you know? Nothing that was trendy during that time, as we look through the history of photography, has really stayed with us.
Mhm.
You know, people trying to copy impressionist painters, you know, around the turn of the last century. Those images haven't stayed with us because they were trying to copy people. They were trying to be trendy, you know. So yeah,
Be
we're good.
authentic.
We see the three of us see things the same way. You know.
Yeah.
I
We're
smell
seasoned.
photo
We're
walk going
seasoned.
on.
We've been around the block a couple times. We'll sneak in one last little two-part question here from Elizabeth. Number one, do you add visual interest based on the job of the person that will give them more presence? So I think that seems pretty cut and dry. Like you're adding the whole purpose of environmental portraiture, which I love. I love environmental portraiture. I think it's one of the most astute and detail-oriented forms of photography because I think I'm going to answer this for you in a way. You are adding elements from that person's life, from their job that add presence because otherwise it's not environmental portraiture. And otherwise, if you're not doing environmental portraiture, what's the point of using a 24 millimeter? You can just use an 85 like every other portrait photographer and
Right.
focus on the person. So, can you
Right.
expand a little bit upon how you use their interests and how you use what you come across in conversation or what you would pick up from their job or their occupation to then fill in that gaps and create, as you said during your talk, a more interesting composition?
Well, you know, there's a lot of, you know, there's so many elements that you can add into an image to make it more visually interesting. You know, I want these images to be interesting for anybody that looks at them, not someone in that person's family, anyone that looks at that image, right? So, and I want it to be truthful. So the time that I'm spending, you know, and all these people, I'm just meeting them for the first time when I walk into their space, their home, their art gallery, their environment, their studio, whatever it is. So, you know, as we're talking, you know, these things that are in their life, they're important to them. So I'm bringing these elements, the artwork, the texture, the colors together so that it works together visually, but also it's a reflection of who they are. And it's really kind of fascinating, especially with the artists. When I start asking them, because I'll ask some things like, how about let me bring this in, let me bring that in. What do you think of this? We're both reaching for the same thing a lot of times, you know, especially with the artists. So, you know, a lot of it's feeling, and you know, I'm always surprised that when I'm talking to people, a lot of times I'm moving things a little bit while I'm visiting with them, and I'm always surprised that when I go back and start going through the files at what I did, you know, because it's like your mind's working on different levels. You know, you're talking, you're communicating, you're having a conversation, you're getting to know these people, but somewhere in here, this mind is going, let's add some texture, let's add some visual balance, wow, look at those primary colors. And so a lot of it's just emotional visual reactions that I'm adjusting, you know, while I'm visiting with the people. So
You're doing 5,000 different things because you have an idea of the image in your head and you know what makes for engaging imagery and you know what, you know, it's almost like it's like being in the Matrix where some people just see numbers falling, but when you're in there, it's like, no, I know that, like, I'm sure you guys do this too. It's like you walk into your
yeah.
room and you're like, wow, that light is great. The way it hits here, if someone were
Yeah.
to sit right there and then they would
Yeah.
have a shadow cast on this and you just start, it's kind of like one of those things where, and again, going back to what Frank was talking about, it's the experience. So whether the experience is life or photography, you have experience and you know what you like, you know what has motivated you. You know the kinds of movies that you've watched for the past X amount of years that they all have a certain kind of vibe to them. Or you like when a movie does this perspective. And I think that kind of is what you're talking about, Michael. It's all these things that are going on in your head. And it's like if you see a space, you're like, okay, I need to fill that gap. Or no, I don't need to fill that gap because this reason. So
Mhm.
I'm going to sneak in one last. Elizabeth had a little two-part here. How do you kill the reflection in glasses? Do you guys have any tricks that you use or any lighting techniques that make sure, because it's so much easier for a lot of people to say, well, just have them remove their glasses. But some people, glasses are a part of them. And the same way that if somebody looks uncomfortable in front of the camera, it's not so easy to tell somebody who can't see without glasses to look
Right.
the same way. It's you're capturing a portrait. You're looking through the eyes. You can see if somebody is like, hey, I can't see, but I'm just looking in the direction of the camera. How do you guys work with glasses?
Well, the concept really is angle of reflection, angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. Okay. So however light hits a surface, in general, it's going to bounce back in majority back right at the same angle. So if it's hitting directly into a subject, it's going to come right back at you. If it hits at angles like this, it's going to come off. If it hits at a 45-degree angle, the reflection of most of that energy is going to go off at a 45-degree. So if their face can be still flattered, if you turn the glasses away from the light source, the reflection will be seen over here off to the side and not where the camera is. Does that make sense? So if it's hits at 45 and that what you see reflection wise bounces off at a 45, so you're at a 90. So
He'll have a
It's all
diagram on
math.
Wednesday.
yeah, really.
We get a rubric on that.
He's gonna map that out on Wednesday.
There we go. We'll
Well,
get that
it's-
mapped out on Wednesday.
It's just, if something hits at a certain angle, it's going to come back at you. That if it's zero angle, it's going to come right back at you.
Okay, you're
And-
saying the same thing.
Okay,
So
sorry.
you're still gonna have a diagram on Wednesday.
Sorry.
Sorry, Elizabeth.
Just cut eyes out of the magazine and tape them.
Yeah, take a picture, take their glasses off, do a picture again, and send it to retouch up. Okay.
This is nice. In 5 years, people are going to be teaching, oh, just go to the generative fill tool. There's going to be
right.
a sunglass or a glass, spectacle reflection AI tool.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, it seems so easy to me, but
Ah.
I've done it a while. Yeah.
But yeah, going back to Frank, right? You can speak for life experience, but everyone can always benefit from brushing up on the 101 stuff, because it's once you get that stuff out of the way, it's so much easier to just create when you don't have to think. Incidents. You have the angle of reflection, and it's okay. I know my light's here. What is it going to? It's killing me right above, right here. Where is it? This right here, that little, see right there on my subway sign. And it's like, I know what I have to do to move it. And it's that relationship of where it's going to go, what direction. Now, how is that going to play to the light on my face? Am I getting?
We'll expect that to be gone on Wednesday.
It better be gone on Wednesday, because this is what happens when you have a 7-year-old who uses your streaming studio. I rent it out to the 7-year-old tenant, and he goes crazy with the lights.
I love it.
Well, Monica, Michael, this has been a great introduction to the Roadwork series. I'm looking forward to not just part 2, but Michael, I'm looking forward to seeing the book. You threw the word book out there.
Yeah.
I'm holding you to it now. I don't care if it's 20 years from now. That there's got to be. I got to see this in print.
Yeah. Look, okay, so you're going to do the introduction, and we're going to go shoot sometime together.
There we go.
Okay.
And I want to see Roadwork in action.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Huh?
We're gonna have a part 3. It's gonna be Roadwork Roadwork demystified. We're gonna I'm gonna give my, but except Monica and I are gonna be on, and you have to sit there and you have you can't control anything. You just have to. We talk about the Roadwork project, Roadwork from the outside.
Exactly. Sounds much more fun.
So she's gonna come and she'll just do it's like a DVD commentary. She'll just be doing the commentary as
she does the voiceover.
Yeah.
All right, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you guys. Of course, this is just, again, an awesome series. I think it's super inspirational, and it really, to go back to what I said earlier, this is the manifestation of what everybody should be doing, which is talking more in real life and communicating and getting to know people. And I think that's such an awesome thing. So I'm looking forward to part 2. There we go. That was why they were waving in the back, like, stop talking, get out. To all of our viewers out there, of course, thank you for tuning in. We will be back on Wednesday for part 2 of this. And a huge thank you to, of course, Sony for hosting this wonderful series. And if you guys don't know Monica by now, you're going to be seeing Monica very soon as well. It's like, I feel like we're getting
into a good rhythm here.
We're getting into a good flow here. So let's keep it going. Again, if you guys want to check out the rest of what we do, head over to YouTube, look up B&H Event Space. We can find you there. For Michael, Monica, Sony, and the rest of the Event Space team, we will catch y'all next time.